Parasite, out in cinemas now, the new Korean film by Bong Joon-ho. It has already been released in several countries and has been shown at multiple festivals around the world to an insanely positive reception and critical buzz. Critics have given it raving reviews and it won the main prize at Cannes. So naturally, I was really excited to finally go and see it. Now, I watched it almost completely blind. I saw the trailer, which reveals absolutely nothing, and I deliberately avoided any other plot details. I chose not to read about the film. And I am glad I did so. So, if you're like me and prefer this way of watching movies, just exploring it on your own, trust me, drop whatever it is you're doing at the moment, go to the cinema, go see it, and then come back and watch the rest of the video. It really is that amazing. It's worth watching, no question about it. And while I won't include any specific spoilers for the plot in the video, I will now give a rough outline of the story, which may take away some of the fun of discovering it on your own. Okay, if you're still with me. The film tells the story of a poor Korean family of four. They live in a shithole apartment below the street level, and they take odd jobs to make ends meet. Sometimes they work for a pizza place, sometimes they do other stuff. One day, a friend of the son tells him about his tutoring job. He's been teaching English to a girl from a rich family. Now he's going abroad and he wants to recommend his friend instead for the position. So he does, and there is some bullshitting involved. The son pretends to be an actual college student, pretends to fakes his qualifications and his diploma, and hides his true social standing, but he does get the job thanks to that. Then he learns that the family he's working for is also coincidentally looking for an art teacher for their young son. And since his sister has some skills in the area, he recommends her. Again, bullshitting their way through it. They pretend to be unrelated and sell the story that the sister is actually this hugely sought after person by other rich people. And then they begin hatching this plan to also install their parents in the house as well, also as completely unrelated workers. That's basically as much as I'm telling. The story goes from there, and based on the description, you may expect where it's going, and it follows those expectations until it's not. So the first half of the film is essentially this comedy drama, with proportions being shifted way towards the comedy aspect. The antics of the poor family and naivete of the rich people they work for make for a pretty funny setup, and it's executed amazingly well, not the least because of the acting and the chemistry between the characters. It made me think of Shoplifters multiple times, which came out last year and also featured a story of a family living on a sort of brink of society. But it also resembles heist movies, weirdly enough, like Ocean's 11, where we get to see the characters hatch their plans and then sit on the edge of our seats as they execute them. Of course, the stakes are much lower here, but despite that, or who knows, maybe because of that, it just makes for such a pleasant watch. It's just a joy to see the film. I mean, I was constantly smiling at the screen and just had a blast seeing the progress of this slow infiltration of the rich family house. That's the first half of the film, and then around the midway point, something happens which blows the film wide open. It's madness. I cannot remember the last time I was so shocked in cinema. I was just sitting with my eyes wide going, what the fuck is happening here, multiple times. And yeah, I know, you'll say they spoiled it already because now everybody will be looking for a plot twist. But trust me, just believe me, even with what I just said, it's impossible to predict where this movie goes. It comes completely out of left field, and yet afterwards you can kind of think back and remember the seeds for it being planted much earlier on. Anyway, the movie then turns into a completely different beast. There are still comedic undertones and there is still tension, or rather the tension escalates even more. But there's also much more of a drama aspect and even tragedy to it. The atmosphere becomes, I don't want to say serious because that wouldn't be the exact word, but maybe nervous in a way. And that shift in the tone and the direction of the story could very easily be the downfall of the film, because it's not something easy to execute, to balance those two different tones in different halves of the film. But Parasite does this all in a magnificent way. After having so much fun in the first half, I thought it could not get any better until it did. So, yes, because of the tone shift, I can't really say it was still a full on enjoyable experience, a fun thing to watch. But an experience it certainly was. It's just riveting to watch through to the end. So here's the best thing about this movie in my mind. It is unlike any other. Completely unique, not only because of the unpredictable and crazy story, but also, for me at least, because of the different sensibilities of Korean cinema. It's kind of difficult for me to articulate, but I mostly, let's put it this way, I mostly watch movies made in the US. Not surprising, as they comprise most of what's available in cinemas or on streaming platforms. And I think I have seen so many of them at this point that even when a movie does experiment and does try to do something different, it still very often feels familiar. This comes down to reusing tropes and plot points that are sort of ingrained in the Western English speaking culture. But it is also tied to the way dialogue is written and sentences are constructed, in the way they are spoken out and acted out. The language very much, I think, puts a mark on the piece of art that is created in it. And in the case of Parasite, it even goes further as it extends to the language of the film. So not only the fact that it's in Korean, that the characters speak Korean, makes a mark on the film, it's also the way the shots are framed, the way the camera moves, the look of the locations and the characters. It's all just slightly different, slightly odd in comparison to what we're used to in the West. And the result is that the movie just feels like a massive breath of fresh air. It's new, it's unique, it's fun, it doesn't rehash so many things that we've seen before. There's excitement in every scene because you cannot expect where the story will go, but also how it will be presented to you. So to me, it's clearly one of the best movies of the year so far. And in my book, it comes pretty damn close to being a perfect film. I think the only thing that stops me from labeling it as such is the ending to the film. And again, difficult to explain, but I don't mean the very last scene, the very last thing that happens, because that was brilliant. But the last 10 or 15 minutes before that, this last act, so to speak, I thought those were a bit weird in the context of what came before that, and compared to how tight it all used to be. So that the last act kind of made me feel like the filmmakers didn't quite know how to get from where they were to where they wanted to be with in the last scene. However, even despite that, this is like really mild criticism from me, because I think that Parasite is absolutely terrific. It's engaging, it's fun at times and shocking at other times. It just grips you almost all the way through and is crafted in an interesting, unique way with a ton of attention to detail. I adored this film.